Welcome to the Mark Divine Show. This podcast is about more than just listening. It's about sparking action and inspiration while transforming yourself, your community, and the world at large. Each episode is designed to help you grow as a leader, break through personal barriers, and make lasting impact. Together, you and your host will explore topics like mental toughness, emotional resilience, purpose, and evolving consciousness, while embracing challenges and facing this fast-changing world. Our guests on the Mark Divine Show are exceptional individuals who offer wisdom from diverse fields, whether it's science, philosophy, leadership, human performance, or psychedelic research. Join us today as we dare to think bigger, live bolder, and unlock the common potential within everyone. Here's your host, Mark Divine.
Welcome to the Mark Divine Show. I'm your host, Mark Divine. Thanks so much for joining us today. Super stoked to have you here. Today, we are going to have a conversation with my lovely daughter, Catherine, about the mental mountain, mental development, mental training, which is the second of the 5 mountains that I introduce in my book, Uncommon. The 5 mountains are the 5 domains that we want to train and integrate so that we become whole again. We reintegrate or we embody the totality of who we are to be able to tap into the skills that we need to really lead in the exponential age, in the age of VUCA. And those skills are not the linear horizontal skills that you've been taught to date. They are the skills of interdependence and us mentality, deep compassion and empathy, great insight, creativity, and intuition. These things are in the past, well, even to many people here in the present, these are skills that people think are just like innate, like either you're born with them or you're not. And that's false, right? These are skills that you can train. And if you don't train them, then they lay dormant. So you just think that they're not part of who you are. Yet you're going to need, if you want to thrive in VUCA, and you want to thrive in the age of AI, then we need to develop these uniquely human skills: creativity, compassion, intuition, insight, spontaneous knowingness, right? And mental training is really is the pathway to tapping into those skills. So mental mountain is the second of the 5 mountains. We did a deep dive on the physical mountain to learn how to re-embody the mind so that we can access whole mind thinking. Mental mountain is discrete. Mental development, mental training is the second mountain. Then the emotional mountain, and then intuition and spirit. So we're going to go through these in detail in future episodes, but today we're going to talk about the mental mountain, just have a conversation. Hello, Kath.
Hey, I got a couple questions for you right out of the gate. Well, because we talked a lot about the mind, you are your mind. And then, of course, we go to like over-identification. So, but 2 of the things I want to ask right away is, how does the mental mountain connect to, and training the mental mountain to developing somebody regarding cognitive bias and critical thinking?
Okay. Well, we have to look at the mind holistically, right?
Okay.
Critical thinking and cognitive biases are the 2 different things, right?
Yep.
Cognitive bias is essentially how your mind is conditioned to view the world a certain way. Your perception of reality, which creates filters, and those filters are basically, like, imagine good, bad being a filter, right?
Right,
yes,
wrong.
No, right, wrong. And so we have this dualistic structure in the brain, in our mind, because that's the setup. That's how the brain organizes reality so that we don't all fly off, and there's no structure in this world.
So from your perspective, how would one train?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I always come back. So cognitive bias is all a matter of conditioning.
Yes.
Right? Which then creates, some of it's really deeply subconscious. Most of it is the result of just culture, even language, all the patterns that you've been exposed to since you popped out of the womb. And it's not good, it's not right or wrong. There's just more that are optimal versus not optimal, right? So critical thinking is the ability to critique those mental models and critique, right, what you're perceiving, and critique what other people are perceiving, and to try to discern some higher good or some higher order out of that you think is good. Now, most people think they're doing critical thinking, but they're actually not. They're just doing critical judging.
Right.
So critical thinking requires that we move beyond, as best we can, the biases to be able to see a new order, a new level, right? And so to create new perspectives and to come up with decisions that are like really different. And that's the realm of creativity. Now, you're not going to get to critical thinking or overcome cognitive biases without self-examination. And you don't get to self-examination without training your mind. Even the idea of, well, I'm going to examine myself. People are like, I don't know what that means. They look at their body and they say, I see myself. They don't realize that their self is completely hidden from their view. We call it the background of obviousness, right? It's the programming, both subconscious and overt. But most of the time, overt is even hidden from people's views, right? It's just spilling out all over the place. So mental development first requires like a dualistic waking up. And I don't mean using the term like a...
And spirituality, yeah.
A dualistic sense of waking up to the fact that like you don't know...
What you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
You look at the story that you've been living and the decisions you made, and you're like, what a shit show, or wow, right? I thought that was serving me, but it's not. Or I never questioned it. But where all that thinking got me, I don't really like it. And I don't want to keep going on with it because, if you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, that's a definite insanity. And so a lot of people never get there. It's estimated that less than 5%, or around 5% of global population does this type of work where they take the time to question the stories and the behaviors and the patterns and even the language and the belief systems and the mental models that they have been taught and are able to say no. This podcast is sponsored by Marley Spoon. I'm genuinely excited about Marley Spoon because they're helping me fast track my way to eating well without all the stress and complexity. As a former SEAL, I've always been big on discipline and routine. But when it comes to meal planning and prep, I struggle. That's why I'm stoked about Marley Spoon. It's a meal delivery service that's been a game changer for me. What I love about them is that they give you over 100 recipes to choose from every week. Everything from hearty comfort food to lighter, healthier options. My recent favorite is their grilled chicken with avocado salsa. It's like a burst of flavor that fuels my training. And get this, they just launched new 15-minute express recipes. Perfect for those days when you're running from one mission to the next. Plus, they feature Martha Stewart's recipes every week. These dishes taste like they're straight out of a 5-star restaurant. I love Marley Spoon's commitment to quality. I'm always preaching about the importance of fueling your body right, and I appreciate that Marley Spoon has a registered dietitian reviewing every recipe. It's like having a nutrition expert and a chef in your kitchen. So this year, fast track your way to eating really well with Marley Spoon. Head over to their website, marleyspoon.com, MARLEYSPOON.com/offer/divine. Use the code DIVINE, DIVINE, for up to 27 free meals. That's right, up to 27 free meals with Marley Spoon. That's an incredible offer. marleyspoon.com/offer, OFFER, /divine, Use that with the code DIVINE to get up to 27 free meals. One last time, go to marleyspoon.com/offer, /divine for up to 27 free meals. Make sure you use that code DIVINE at checkout so they know that I sent you. Thanks, Marley Spoon, for sponsoring the Mark Divine Show. Winners don't make resolutions. Resolutions break. Instead, winners just start and then maximize on their momentum. And when their goal is health span, being able to live better for longer, there's a few non-negotiables. And one of them is quality. When it comes to supplements geared toward high performers, no one does quality like Momentous does. They invest in NSF certification, meaning each batch is tested for heavy metals, harmful additives, and label claim accuracy. And it's the reason they're trusted by all 32 NFL teams and collegiate sports team dietitians all over the country. Trusting research and their ecosystem of experts over fads means not offering every supplement on the market. Other brands can do that. Momentous believes in nailing the basics with bone-crushing consistency, then curating an intentional routine based on your individual goals. And by basics, I mean protein and creatine. Fundamental basics for your supplement routine. Momentous sources CreaPure, the purest form of creatine monohydrate available, and it's an absolute must for both men and women for peak physical and cognitive performance. If you want to learn more, go to livemomentous.com, livemomentus.com. Try it today, 20% off using the code DIVINE, DIVINE. Start living on purpose now. Get your supplements at livemomentous.com. Check out their creatine and their protein, the basic must-haves. 20% off. Use the code DIVINE at livemomentous.com.
Do you think paying attention to, and I know you're saying language like as in like I'm a native English speaker versus I'm a native Chinese speaker.
There's bias built into language.
But could you say that part of training the mental mountain also is starting to watch how you speak?
Well, for sure. That's going to be both an outcome of the training as well as it could be a practice.
Okay.
Right? So for instance, if we say we want you to develop a mindfulness practice. And in that mindfulness practice, we want you to just sit there and monitor, just watch what's going on. Don't engage with it, right? So mindfulness is really powerful because if you've got the mental stability and you've tamed your monkey mind to do mindfulness practice, by the way, those are prerequisites. You can come back to that. Then you develop this kind of spacious awareness and this watching ability to be like, oh yeah, look at those thoughts. Look at this stuff going on. And then suddenly there's this like turnaround of your awareness and be like, wait a minute, who is looking at, who is watching? And so your identity, your sense of I self shifts from thinker saying, I am anger, right? I am sadness. I am, right?
Yes.
I am not worthy.
Yep.
Or I am grandiose. You're merged. People are merged with that.
Yep.
But mindfulness then creates this sense of, wait, I'm watching that, I see that, but that's actually not me. And so you move from I am that to I am something else that's vastly more, and anger is happening.
Yep. I remember actually the very first time that I had that experience, like where I realized that I had been that I had identified myself and been misidentified
with the object of
and
what's
that was
happening.
even after years.
But that's common. Kat.
Years
that's
of
normal
talk therapy and stuff like that. But from meditation and just sitting and being told, watch my thoughts, and just watch them.
Engage,
don't try to engage. Don't engage with them, and just watch. Don't tell the story. So when you notice you're telling the story, go back to watching, that you're telling yourself a story. And it was in my very first yoga teacher training, it was 22 years ago. And I just remember that moment where I realized, oh,
it's a sea change.
I am
right?
not that.
So it normally takes something like a process. Like you were taught how to meditate through yoga, right? Meditation, yoga, or, hand in glove. I learned it through karate and Zen. Right. And mostly Zen, just sitting on the bench. And our instructions weren't to watch our thoughts. So we weren't practicing mindfulness. We were practicing concentration. Now, this gets back to my earlier comment. Like, it's very difficult to do mindfulness practice for most Americans because they haven't tamed their monkey mind, right? They haven't learned to stabilize their mind and concentrate, control their attention and concentrate on that one singular thing. So that's, I believe, a prerequisite.
I agree with you. And I'll tell you, I didn't get taught that. And I think it would have saved me a lot of struggle in my meditation practice if I had had a teacher that had said, learn how to concentrate first. Yeah. So I didn't actually really experience non-monkey mind as a daily meditation practitioner for the first 6 years.
Most people, it's a lot longer.
And for a lot of people, it's a lot longer. But I think that, so that prerequisite of concentration. So this mental mountain, training concentration, how to maintain focus and concentration. So you're a master at that. Like you made me laugh the other day when, was it Dan Brown said that to you, is like maybe like,
hey Mark, you can let go of that concentration stuff. Like you're a Navy SEAL.
I think you know how to focus. Yeah,
you know
I think
how to focus.
Okay, so so you have hyper training and focus. So okay, say, especially in a world of distractions right now,
It's
right?
crazy,
Like
yeah.
it's like crazy, all the bells and dings and, oh, I'm going to do that. So to really concentrate, okay, I want to do this concentrated effort. Let's say for how many minutes is the most ideal in
Depends upon what it is you want
dependence
to
on
do. I can spend hours concentrating on writing when I'm writing.
Okay, so writing. I want to write and I want to concentrate to write. How do I train my mind to concentrate to write?
Well, one way to do it is to just write every day, right? So that's a concentration practice. Just focus on nothing but writing. But it's difficult for people to do that. I think that
Why do you think it's difficult?
because, again, you haven't calmed the body enough to be able to sit and focus for that long a period of time, and you become addicted to those distractions.
Okay.
So like if you were a client, I'd say, okay, Kat, this is what you want to do. You want to become a writer, right? You want to get that book done. Great. Well, we need to teach you how to concentrate. And you're like, well, I have trouble concentrating. I say, okay, good. That's because you've trained your mind to be distractible. So we got to untrain your mind, right? We got to retrain your mind to be undistractible.
Yep.
So first of all, let's look at, at our life and say, what are the things that distract you? Well, you've got your phone and all these alerts. Let's first of all turn off all the alerts. Secondly, when you write, you're going to put your phone in another room. Third, you don't really have a schedule for writing. So let's just plan, like, how do you work best? Well, let's say if you're a really creative person and you're just going to write when you feel inspired, you're never going to write. So you actually kind of have to like be opposite of that and just like say, I'm going to be disciplined for once. And I'm going to write first thing when I wake up in the morning for a half hour.
That's my best time, honestly, with concentration.
It's great for a lot of people. And so you do have no distractions. You put your phone away, close your door, lock your door, whatever, protect that time. And then you just start something.
I remember
writing.
It was either somebody that you interviewed or somebody we worked with a while ago. They said they put a sign out like in their family home
don't bother me.
that said like, working because they were all working from home. I think it was during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
One of my favorite concentration practices, and I'm curious what you think, is, and you know this, but it's either staring at an image or a flame. Those
will work, yeah.
And then not trying to identify the flame, not saying that's fire, but just like watching it.
Sure. Well, you're getting to the kind of like the second point.
Okay.
So if you want to learn, everyone needs to learn how to concentrate, especially if they want to develop their minds further, to get into mindfulness and then spiritual awakening type work. So I was just saying, if you have a particular interest that you need to learn to concentrate, then we want to structure our lives and focus on doing some of that work, or else it'll never get done, right? And so that's a concentration training in and of itself. But we want to, because everything we do is like double tapping or triple tapping, we also want to do things that deliberately train our mind to stabilize and to hold attention. And the first thing that we do is box breathing. And box breathing has the effect, it's a triple whammy. Like there's a lot of practices that are kind of accrue from box breathing, but there's three core. First is just breathing for arousal control. And all you got to do is the breathing practice. Inhale, 5 count, hold, 5 count, exhale, 5 count, hold, 5 count. If you're doing it well, deep diaphragmatic nostril breathing, then you're activating that parasympathetic nervous system. You're calming your body down. If you calm your body down, the brain also calms down because it's part of your body, right? And so now your brain is starting to like settle down. And instead of firing off, 60,000 thoughts a second at gamma or high beta, it calms down to high alpha, low beta, and they experience, the subjective experience is calmness of thought, clarity, right? And so suddenly you're like, oh, I've got more space to work with here. I'm not caught up in all that thinking as much. So arousal control, it's kind of like we said before that physical mountain training is a prerequisite to mental training. Arousal control is one of the outcomes. and benefits of physical mountain training, and box breathing starts as a physical mountain practice, and then it bridges into a mental practice. The second thing that happens is we hold our attention. This is like your comment about focusing on one thing. While you're breathing, begin the practice of holding your attention on one thing. So because we're doing the box breathing practice, I teach just focus really intently with utmost curiosity on every phase of that breathing practice, even to include visualizing, drawing the box in your mind's eye. That's no different than staring at a candle passively and not judging it, not wondering, just staring, trying to understand, trying to merge with the candle, right? Or an iconic image, right? Like of Jesus or whatever that inspires you, or a mantra, right? So inhale, hold your breath, recite your mantra, exhale, hold your breath, recite your mantra. Those are concentration practices and attention control practices. The difference is we hold our attention on that object of attention or subject, and that's attention control. And then we notice if our mind starts to wander, like, or we split attention. That was a classic for me because I was strong enough to hold my attention, but my brain would also be thinking about something else, right? So that's split attention. Yep. So you begin to notice more and more quickly when you've split your attention or lost your attention, and you bring it back because that's your intention. Bring it back to the object. And then concentration is developed because over time, you just keep coming back, and you're able to hold your attention for longer and longer periods of time, i.e. you're concentrating on it. And this develops incredible mental power, right? Because most people's minds are the default mode network. They're just being triggered into constant memory-based thinking, and they're adding fuel to those thoughts by engaging with them, by believing that they are those thoughts, which keeps them alive, which then stuffs them back into memory with even more energy, and then they come up again the next day. And so you're on this endless freaking treadmill of having the same thoughts every day, wishing you were making some progress, but not understanding why.
There's reactivity, right, in that too.
That includes the reactivity. Yeah. It's because you're merged with the thoughts.
And that's like when you're saying that about the mental training, because I think that's one of the real requisites for it or prerequisite, but it's this understanding like, before I knew that, let's say before I had that moment of, I'm not
my thoughts.
I'm not my thoughts and I'm not my feelings. These are things that are constantly changing and I'm something else.
Right.
And then we can go deeper into that at another time around spiritual stuff. But the like that I am actually most of my interactions, conversations, and choices are all on reactivity.
That's right.
Because I'm basing all the information on memory,
right.
which is
the boot,
I've said this before,
right? Catherine, that people love to hold on to the idea that they have free will.
Yeah.
Unless they're doing work to free themselves from their conditioning and patterning, they don't have free will.
Yeah.
They're just operating off some programming, just like a little robot. And so free will is a great gift that must be earned.
Mm.
And you have free will when you begin to separate from your thoughts, and you can then look at that thought pattern and be like, yes, I want to engage with that, or no, I don't want to. I don't want to feed that anymore. I'm going to let that one go away. And then you can ask for inspiration, right? About what would be a better way to see the world, right?
Yeah.
What's a better way? And so that's one of the beautiful outcomes of this process. So we develop arousal control to calm the thinking down. That's part one of taming the monkey mind, along with getting physical health. And then we develop attention control so we can hold our attention and become less distractible. There's enormous benefits for productivity. And then we develop concentration, which happens quite naturally by really being able to hold our attention for long periods of time. And it's like turning your mind from a floodlight, just sending your energy all over the place in all directions, into like a laser beam. So we can really, really pierce, the veil and see things much more clearly and much more depth, right? So what's cool now is through this practice, which some people could be years and some people maybe months, but it depends on how developed what they've done with their minds. If you are practicing with the intention of developing mindful awareness and what we call witnessing capacity, there's a point in time where you will experience that natural like pop or shift where you suddenly separate from your thoughts, and you're able to observe and witness your thoughts, so that then naturally mindfulness opens up for you, right? The only thing that could block that, like it did in my case, I had that, but I kept trying to block it by trying to like think of concentration as the only, like Zen is the only way.
Right.
And that's because I didn't have a good Zen teacher at the time. I literally had Nakamura who I learned with, and then I left, and I was doing it on my own. And I didn't even call it Zen after that. I just called it meditation. So I needed to learn from my mentor, Dan Brown, Zazen teacher, that you can actually block further progress through concentration. And like to have the elephant path kind of imagery from...
Yeah, because you want to be able to...
Or the oxen, right?
Open and receive. That's my experience.
That's right.
So there's a point in my meditation practice.
It's back to effort and surrender.
So
concentration is efforting.
Like
mindfulness is surrendering.
And I mean, I've shared this before. It was like, I remember like I used to think my legs were going to fall off when I would do long sits because they would start to ache and then vibrate and then get really hot, right? And then so I was so identified with the physical body. And then, but at that point, my mind was calming down and it was quiet, but my body would start to be like, we can't do this. So it was still the mental too. You know, there's that mental physical. But then I remember there was this period of like 6 months. As I didn't have a teacher either, you know, so it was, a lot of this could have been expedited with a proper teacher. But it was like, now I have to surrender. And I have to trust that my legs will be there when I come back from this meditation and really open. And that's when, like for me, was magic and mystery and opening to the present moment. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, because, you know, you are so good at being focused and you've trained your mental... I don't think it's ever over. That's my experience at this point. You know, is like to train my mind is always going to be a daily practice. So when you said like you earn free will.
There's no there.
There's no there. And so if you were going to say to somebody who's just starting out to understand the concepts that you teach, and somebody like me who's many years on the path of practicing training my mind and learning what the mind is and, you know, again, the aspects. What do you think the best approach is no matter where you are on the path of mental mountain development?
Best approach to train?
To train.
The best approach, okay.
To identify.
Ultimately, the meta principle here is to train your mind to be comfortable with silence. Ultimately, what we're trying to get to is just pure silence, non-judgmental, non-particularized, meaning non-conceptual, beyond conceptual stillness. And in non-conceptual, universal consciousness, non-personal awareness, we meet our true selves, and you can't be named, right? So the Western world in particular, but even just, you could say just the human mind is designed to keep us from that. It's designed to look outward and think, you know, have us believe that everything we see outside of ourselves is real and that is independent of our thinking. It's not, right? And so we have this massive bias toward doing and action and creating and producing and building. And we also have a massive bias toward doing that alone because we have the sense that we're separate beings, separate in time and space, but also separate from each other, which is also false. And so that's how we're trained and conditioned, and it's thousands of years, and it's not easy to overcome. And so any meditation practice, even a somatic movement practice like yoga or martial arts, is designed to get us to turn away from that and to be able to turn inward and be able to start to see and experience that there's something different, right? That doesn't mean that all this stuff that shows up in the world isn't real to some degree. It is, but it's real in the context of everything supporting that and the background of what allows everything to constantly be created and destroyed.
And
that's source.
And
that's God. And that's universal consciousness.
To me, that circles back to the first question I asked you. It takes critical awareness, critical thinking, to understand that my mind and how it's perceiving the external world is directly related to the internal world.
That's right.
And so I need to learn how to witness what's happening in my internal world so I can start to be present to the duality of the nature of things, if something's true or false or somewhere in the middle, right? And then the other part of what you said was this whole, that I heard you say, is like, there's like a turning key, a lock and key piece of it.
Gate or the key,
Yeah, and am I willing to face the death of who I think I am? Was what was coming up as you were talking, because there's a death that has to happen.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, all the great traditions say that you've got to die to yourself. You got to die to the ego. You got to kill the ego, experience an ego death in order to open up to all that. That's a challenging concept for a lot of people because they fear they're going to lose their identity, their sense of individual self. And it's not true. It just puts it in the proper place, contextual awareness. Back to your comment, in order to even do this work, you do have to have the capacity to overcome your biases or to see how you're conditioned and to ask different questions, better questions, and to develop that discerning critical thinking, right? And what we're really talking about there is you have to strengthen your ego. There's a real conundrum, right? Because I'm saying at the same time that you need to kill your ego. But
maybe sharpen, strengthen,
fortify, right? You have to fortify your ego in order to have the courage to do the work. And also so the ego gets to look at itself and be like, oh my God, I see what the ego is, right? And so you're using the mind, the ego mind, to basically begin to, like concentration is like, what are you you're learning, the ego is going to love that. I'm learning how to really concentrate, right? But then you turn the object of concentration on itself, and then suddenly it begins to see the gaps and the inconsistencies and the flaws in memory, and it starts to believe and take Mark seriously and Catherine seriously and be like, oh, really interesting. And it's confident enough in itself to be able to say, I'm not going to lose anything by doing this work. I'm actually going to gain everything.
Yep.
And so that's when you develop the motivation, right? The motivation is there. And then the key, you're given the key at the exact right moment when you're ready. Right? And you can't find it. There's no like egg hunt in your video game here. The key is essentially a ripening of your ego to where suddenly it suddenly just basically says, okay, I'm not in charge.
Are you tired of feeling like your gut health is out of whack? I know that I was. Then I discovered Seed's DS-01 Daily Synbiotic, and that's been a game changer for me. DS-01 is a clinically validated 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic. It's formulated with 24 strains that support your whole body. It's not just about gut health. This promotes radiant skin, immune system health, and helps maintain a healthy gut barrier. Since I started taking DS-01, I've noticed a real difference in how I feel every day. My digestion feels smoother, and I feel lighter overall. I've even recommended it to my mom and best friend who've had similar positive experiences. What's amazing is that over 1 million people have experienced the power of DS-01. That's more than the population of San Francisco. And 92% of them have recommended it to a friend or family member. If you're ready to experience a probiotic that actually works, go check them out at seed.com. That's SEED.com/divine, DIVINE. Use the code 25divine to get 25% off your first month. Again, 25% off your first month of Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic at seed.com/divine. Again, use that code 25divine. Thanks, Seed, for being a sponsor of the Mark Divine Show.
And there's a leaning into the discomfort. It's like that's where the physical mountain, I know that's why you put it first. There's this leaning into discomfort. There's a strengthening of body,
right,
so that you can do that practice. And one thing that came up, which is a interesting thought, that I've never had before is the true self, the one that is watching, is always concentrating.
Always there. Well,
it's always concentrating. It's
sure.
always present.
It's always present.
So it's so it's
I
pretty
wouldn't say it's
focused.
concentrating, but it is the reason
Maybe
you're
not.
able to focus.
Yeah, it's the reason you're able to focus.
Yeah, it's always there. And just like the saying, and we got to wrap up here, that like you're always awakened, you're just unaware of it.
Yeah. I think that
Right?
too. I'm like,
It's there.
I'm totally enlightened. I just
So
forget all the
key
time.
opens up a gateless gate, right? Or Suzuki says it's like a swinging door, right?
Yeah.
You step over the other side and you see from the perspective of awakened awareness that you've always been here, and that the person looking through your eyes that you mistook for Mark or Catherine was actually Source. And yet Source needs to express through its infinite form. And so this body is one of those forms. And so it's both and. It is both Source and it is this separate, seemingly separate being that's having this unique experience that is clouded with these conditionings. So awakening is simply the ability to see the false as false and to open up to the truth of who you really are. But it doesn't mean you discard everything. You just keep on living. Like say, before enlightenment, chop wood, or before enlightenment, take out the trash. After enlightenment, take out the trash. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. But you do it with awareness of who you really are. And part of that is because we want to live fully in the world is to continue to do the work to eradicate negative patterns that may be baked into your system, baked into your, just becoming awakened doesn't suddenly make you a saint, right?
Absolutely.
There's got to be different conditions, afoot for that to happen. That's a karmic thing, right?
And that was also when you said the one who's watching has always been there, and this again goes into the other mountain, but it was there before we were born. It'll be there after we're born.
That's right.
It's something that's so expansive. So maybe that's why concentration's not
And
the
it's
best
going to
word.
be there for your next life, right? It's going to hold, it'll hold the memories and the energetic blueprint of this life. And if there's a compulsion or desire to be reborn as a human, then you'll come back.
And that comes back to
it'll be
purpose.
that same awareness. It'll be that same primordial sense of universal self. Because that's who you are. That's who we are. And mental development, the mental mountain training brings that to us. And people say, why do it? Because it is exactly what you're really looking for. You're looking for yourself. You spend your entire life chasing all the idols and all the money and all the fame and fortune. And you're going to get at the end and be like, that didn't get me any closer to myself. In fact, we know those things those are the obstacles that Jesus talked about. They're all obstacles. Doesn't mean you can't have them if you're doing the work, but they should be the result of you doing good things in the world. And they shouldn't be a goal in and of themselves. And that's hard for a lot of people to let go of. Because they're going to be obstacles. You're going to get to the end of your life and be like, man, I wish I hadn't spent all that focus and all that time thinking that all that stuff was going to give me what I want, because it's not.
That's one of the mental practices that I like to.
We have to wrap up.
One of the mental practices that I like a lot is asking myself when I'm thinking about something, or if I'm engaging in something on my deathbed.
Right. Is this going to matter?
And is it in alignment with, again, when I'm taking my last breath, did I live my life well?
We're going to end there.
Okay.
Kath, thanks so much. We've been going for a while.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us here on the Mark Divine Show. I hope you enjoyed this conversation between Kath and I about mental mountain, mental training, mental development. We could keep going for hours.
We could.
And we will in the future. Hoo-yah. Mark Divine out.
Thank you for joining us on the Mark Divine Show. We hope this podcast has enriched your life as well as encouraged you to think from new perspectives and make actionable change. You can find all the resources from this episode on the website markdivine.com, along with the video version on the YouTube channel. Just search Mark Divine. You can also connect with Mark Divine directly on Twitter X, Instagram, Facebook, or you can also reach out if you want to share ideas, bring up topics you'd like to hear Mark discuss, or any guest suggestions via his LinkedIn page, Mark Divine. A big thanks to our amazing team at Jet Studios, bringing this podcast to you every week. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the Divine Inspiration newsletter. You can go to markdivine.com and subscribe there. Check out Mark's new performance-focused supplements at sealfitsupplements.com. If you are a new or regular listener to the Mark Divine Show, we would be so grateful if you could rate and review the show. It helps with visibility, and it also gets us out there to more people that are wanting to be positive change agents in this world. Remember, you have the power to create change you want to see. So let's all strive for a better world as trailblazers and warriors of positive change. Stay inspired, stay curious, and be uncommon. Thank you.